All right, welcome to episode 3 of the Creepy Crawler. During this episode, I'm going to talk in depth about my collection buckets. This was a design that I came up with to retrofit in my trailer. If you decide to build yourself, I'm sure you're going to have to retrofit something to fit specifically. So the decision to add collection buckets came from the idea of self-colonization. My original thought before this project started was that during the day, I would pull the buckets out from underneath the trailer and let the grubs hit the ground, and that during night, I would allow collection. The reason my theory was behind this is because I wanted to maintain and basically observe how much the chickens were being fed, how much grubs were being grown, how much were being colonized into parents once they hit the soil. So at night, I could collect who was falling down and then decide from there if I wanted to colonize them into flies or not. So the first step, I took 16-inch 2x4s, 16-inch longs, and built basically like a sliding. You can see that the buckets slide in and out. I used a jigsaw and a piece of plywood that I had laying around and cut it into a circular motion to where the buckets would fall in, and that was really my only way to secure the buckets on a mobile scale. I don't know how any other way you would do it, which would allow you to be mobile in this situation. I did also on the lids, you'll see I put the lids back on the buckets, and then I drilled a 4-inch diameter hole because your drop pipe would only be about 1.75 inches in diameter. I gave myself another 1 to 2 inches of lagway just in case something were to happen. During the assembly of this, I put a polycarbonate piping, so it's a little bit harder piping over the adapter, which is on your protopod, which then would go into the bucket. I would suggest using more of like a tube hose, but it's very hard to find the size that would fit on there. You'd have to order online, so make sure you order something more like an irrigation line that has some flexibility. And the reason I say that is because based on your trailer design, you might have to move the piping in a certain direction to fit your 5-gallon bucket. In my case, I used the hard plastic, and I really kind of regretted it, even though it did work. I just turned my pods a little bit to the west because I wanted to get behind the tires on the 2 buckets that are above the tires on the trailer. Okay, so if you have any questions about design, I would be more than happy to answer them. Unfortunately, like I said, I am not a construction worker. In the way I did it, I secured it to the frame of the trailer as well to the bottom of the frame that would be by the protopods. You'll see this, how I bolted them on and screwed them on, and my theory was that if the protopods were to get filled up, you'd probably end up with quite a bit of weight. That theory is kind of out the window because even with a full bucket of grubs, it's really not that heavy. So be creative when you do your own design. Let us know how you did it. Please share it on this YouTube channel and or episode so you can give some other ideas to other people. So once I installed all 8 of my collection buckets, now is going to come into the kind of the coasting period of your protopods. Once again, the most important thing really is for aeration. I noticed when I fed a lot of cow manure, especially the cow manure with milk, the next couple days I had a lot of crusting over. I think that will be an issue in the future if you decide to go complete cow manure with your protopod without having organic matter. I don't know. That's some more research I will be working on, and will be more than happy to fill you in with how the results of that goes. When you do aerate as well, I have a 3-clod garden clod that you could buy at your local hardware store. That worked the best for me. Like I said in the previous moments, you can see in some aeration, my chore did end up breaking down due to the decomposition of my spent grain, which is why I gave so many warnings in the first and second episode. So now, since adding the addition of the buckets, the one issue I did have is with that tire. What I ended up doing is just taking a piece of rope and tying it up to the frame, which allowed collection in the buckets very easily. With that specific design, I did not keep a lid on that. I let it as a full bucket. I did notice, which I warned in episode 1, that if you had some of the black I guess, fluid, which is produced by the black soldier flies, come into your bucket. I did notice without a lid, they will crawl up and get out. That was something that I, stressed in the first episode to make sure that doesn't happen. But if you did not have a lid, I do not see it as a necessary tool, especially if you're on a pasture based with dogs who can protect you from any other critters that would come and try to eat those grubs. I think you'd have no problems not using the lids. So with the first collections at about day 15 and 14, I did end up feeding those grubs to the chickens. The first part of the experiment, I had old wood feeders that we had when we were at lower production for chickens, and I threw the grubs in there. Now I wanted to film the chickens and reactions to the grubs. The first couple days, it's going to take a while for the chickens to get used to the grubs, or to at least know what they are. They're not the fastest moving creatures, so chickens are very attracted to movement. That's why during harvest for us, or when we pick eggs, we will end up always throwing oats. We throw oats around to keep them distracted so they scratch. The end all goal for us was to take the buckets and throw them like oats. So to get them going into a training period, I ended up throwing them into wooden feeders so they can just get used to the fact of the grubs being thrown, not oats. So I do have some close-up footage of how the reactions of the chickens were once we started to feed them grubs, and it was absolutely phenomenal to see how happy they were once they got it. I also do want to mention that in the close-up video, you will see that there are black soldier fly grubs, as well as small pale grubs. Those are house flies, not immature black soldier flies. Even though when I ordered my black soldier fly composting kits from Symptom, the grubs were not all the same age. Specifically, it could be a day or 2 days older, but they were all relatively. So without the production of natural flies, black soldier flies, you can safely assume that those pale grubs will be house flies, not immature black soldier flies. And one of the reasons you can tell as well is that the house flies have a very erratic movement to them, where an immature black soldier fly will be more uniform in movement. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the breeding chambers. This is going to get a little bit of discussion quite a bit throughout the black soldier fly community because on a mobile scale, there really isn't a great option to have areas for black soldier flies to lay eggs once they're flies. So my creative idea was to use about $4 to $5 of PVC that I got from my local hardware store in the 3/4 inch form. And what I did is between the two protopods, I cut 2-foot sections and then had a T, and then had another 2-foot section in between the two pods, and then another 2 feet on each side from the other T. And now what you're looking at is basically a giant H, and that H allowed us to support cardboard that would be suspended and mobile from your actual protopod. Now, when I say that is, you can see every time I check or want to aerate, you don't want to disturb any of the eggs that would be laid in the corrugation of the cardboard. So that was my kind of creative way to get cardboard into the system that would be close to the pod, so once the eggs are laid and they become into the hatch, they don't have much to drop. That was one of my concerns, is that if those eggs, or since we are in a mobile scale, gets very windy, even with the doors, it's not a complete sealed building. So my thought between that was that, okay, this is an easy way for us to do it. If you have other ideas, please share with us. We'd love to see how you guys did it. But my simple form and cheapest form was 3/4 inch PVC pipe. So once I got all the H brackets designed and ready to go, I drilled 3/4 inch holes into cardboard with the corrugation areas out. And what I did is I ended up taking like a common household sprayer, and I ended up soaking coffee grounds and cat food. I guess cat food or cornmeal is a very big attractant to black soldier flies. So what I did is I soaked about, 4 to 5 gallons in a pail, and I ended up putting in a squirt bottle. Now that I look back, I probably was, you could probably do a little bit easier job by just soaking, or at one point what I did, because I didn't want to disturb the eggs, is I just took old rags and t-shirts, I soaked those and then rested them over the cardboard. So the cardboard is a very nice chambered area for black soldier flies to lay their eggs. Like I said in the previous point of this video, with our climate and how Wisconsin's summer turned out, we really had cold nights all really summer long. So I did have black soldier flies attracted to the cardboard. I don't know if they've laid eggs at this point. We're still a little bit, and we're not close to the end of the season, but we're still there. But like I said, with my native insect colony taking out the black soldier flies, this would not be an issue if you're anywhere farther south, or it would not be an issue for us if we had had a normal summer season. Okay, one fun trick that I ended up doing very commonly was that you're going to have a burlap sack that's going to rest over a blanket, like a blanket over your organic matter and your black soldier flies. A really easy, fun trick to do is that if you have common house flies, generally they're going to be close to the surface and they're going to be stuck inside that burlap. So what I ended up doing is just taking the burlap out and throwing them on the ground, and the black soldier and all the chickens would eat all the housefly larvae. There is some precautionary warning with that. Some of the black soldier flies could have or will lay eggs on that burlap sack, so you want to be careful from that. But due to observation, I thought the cardboard was going to be more than enough accurate breeding chambers, so my assumption was that it was okay for the chickens to eat the housefly larvae off those burlaps. Okay, one last thing I do want to talk about as well is once you have a healthy colony of black soldier flies, which are growing in the grub stage in your protopods, you really don't have an off-put smell, especially if you're feeding them on a pretty strict basis. The only time you're going to end up having really a terrible smell is when you overfeed or you have decomposition of organic matter. Once again, when I was inoculated all my 100,000 black soldier fly larvae into my protopods, it only took about 5 days until the smell of the chicken innards would leave. That is what the black soldier flies are really known for and very valued at. They can break down organic matter faster than most insects can. So the black liquid that you see on the inside of the protopods, sometimes on the edges, or even the skirts or the sides, from the inside is really, there's no odor to that smell. And I know that sounds kind of funny because it doesn't look very well, but that the excretion from the black soldier fly grubs really doesn't have a smell. It's almost neutral. And so when you get into the production, you know you have a really healthy colony when you don't have any smell. So thank you once again for watching episode 3. We can't thank the SARE Group, USDA, the University of Minnesota for giving us the opportunity to do this research grant. We also can't thank Rudy and our customers and everyone that has supported us during our farm adventure. We hope that you learned as much as possible from this research and development grant. I am always and really interested in learning how you did things better. Please leave a comment, like it, share the video as much as possible, and thank you again.